your foundry. Finally, thank you to our sponsors and member sponsors who are listed on the screen, and thank you for your support of Denver Startup Week. Now, let's get to it.
Welcome to this session of Denver Startup Week. I'm Kurt Roberts, a partner at Kickstart Fund. We're on a mission to build great companies in the Wild West by backing the boldest entrepreneurs with capital, community, and expertise for the journey. A lot of venture capitalists happen to invest in Colorado. At Kickstart, we focus on it. We love our Colorado startups, Sondermine, Nomad, Pomp, and Havenly, to name just a few. Because we were among the first seed funds in the region, we know what it's like to start something before others understand the vision, which means we're willing to lead investments in promising teams. We use our experience to grow your startup and recruit top talent. Our portfolio community is filled with visionary founders like you who are committed to moving the whole ecosystem together. It's the network effect in full effect. Raising venture capital is more than swapping shares for money. It's inviting the right investors to complement your team. We hope we'll be your choice for seed funding in the Mountain West, and we hope you enjoy this session.
Hi everyone, welcome to Denver Startup Week. I'm Olivia, the founder track chair and member of the Denver Startup Week Organizing Committee. Before we get started, the Denver Startup Week Organizing Committee acknowledges Indigenous peoples as the original owners of the land on which we reside, which is the traditional territory of the Ute, Cheyenne, and Arapaho peoples. We acknowledge the painful history of genocide, ethnic cleansing, stolen land, forced removal, and forced occupation of their territory. And we honor those who have stewarded this land throughout generations and all other Indigenous tribes and nations who call Colorado home. Thank you for joining us for the 10th anniversary of Denver Startup Week. At Denver Startup Week, we strive to make all of our sessions a space where attendees can connect, learn, and grow, regardless of age, gender identity, gender expression, race, ability, sexual orientation, or the combination of those identities. There's something for everyone at DSW, thanks to all of our community members who submitted their best content to make this week what it is. And thank you for joining us. Thank you to our sponsors for their support in helping us to keep DSW free and accessible for all, especially our founder track sponsor, Kickstart. With that, please enjoy this session and the entire week ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the Blackstone Charitable Foundation and the Blackstone Entrepreneurship Network in Colorado, I'm pleased to welcome all of you here for a conversation with 5 amazing entrepreneurs from the DenSUN, which is the Denver Scale Up Network program. The program is celebrating its 5th year. It's a collaboration between Bend, Colorado, and Denver Economic Development and Opportunity, as well as the Colorado Thought Leadership Forum. And we have with us today 5 entrepreneurs who really are embody what DenSUN is really about, which is really kind of widening the funnel and welcoming in a diverse group of entrepreneurs into the ecosystem here in Denver. Each of the entrepreneurs here today that represents 1 year of the 5-year cohort. And with Lorena actually being from the first cohort. And I'm going to have each of them introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about their businesses. So we'll start from the far left. And Kevin, why don't you introduce yourself and a little bit about Orderly?
Sure. My name is Kevin Krauth. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Orderly Health. Orderly Health is an API-first platform to manage provider data using AI and ML. And to translate that, it means that doctor data sucks, and we fix it, load it into the cloud, and make it accessible for other computers to be able to read. We started in 2015, pivoted in 2019 to this model, and we were a part of the cohort in 2018.
Great. Orion.
Hi, everyone. Hello, there we go. My name is Orion Brown. I'm the founder and CEO of BlackTravelBox. We're a personal care products company for travelers of color. So everything that we make is in forms and formats that's meant to travel well, get through TSA, and it's made inclusively. So it works for a wide variety of hair textures and skin tones. We just joined DenSUN this year. So I'm a part of this year's cohort. and really excited to be here and talk about it.
Great. Jeff.
My name is Jeff Hoagland. I'm the co-founder of Invictus Health, which is a for-profit entity, and then Invictus Project, which is our nonprofit. Both organizations are focused on providing accurate diagnostic imaging for TBI, PTSD, and depression, as well as more effective prescription-free interventions. I think like most of us, we saw a problem, and the reason I started Invictus Health and Invictus Project was I was a TBI patient myself. Almost committed suicide in 2015. And at the time I was on 12 different prescriptions, literally begging providers for help. And about 6 weeks later, a really good friend of mine shot himself. And so I got to watch what the consequences of my decision look like. And we realized that the only way we're going to be able to fix this is if we start taking some accountability for our own care. So thank you.
Lorena.
My name is Lorena Cantarovici. I'm the CEO and founder of Maria Empanada. I'm from Buenos Aires. Oh, thank you. I'm from Buenos Aires, Argentina, and Buenos Aires is very well known as for its cafe style life and for empanadas. So, like Milan, like Paris, you know, any other European city. So in Maria Empanada, we try to bring exactly that cafe style life here to Denver, to the United States. And we do it with, of course, with the coffee, and we make it for a person that is ready to grab in the morning, that is very busy, grab a espresso because they need it and continue their life. Or maybe why not catching up on a lunchtime with a coworker, or probably at 3 p.m. watching a fantastic soccer game, you know, and you ended up hugging an stranger there, celebrating because your team won. So all that is Maria Empanada, and we are bringing that to here to Denver and to the United States.
Shell.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shale. I'm the CEO and co-founder of The Last Game Board. We have a tabletop console. So just think Peloton meets Kindle for board games. You turn it on, you have access to any game that you want, like Netflix with movies. We do board games, and our patented tech allows for you to use any physical piece on the surface. So if you have a chess set at home, you can use it on the surface of game board. And yeah, so it's the ability to play with anyone, anywhere. I learned English by playing board games, and I grew up playing Dungeons and Dragons, and I was a part of the cohort in 2019.
Great. Well, we're going to get started by first talking about kind of the core of entrepreneurship, which is inspiration and what gets people to kind of start off. Jeff talked a little bit in his introduction about the inspiration for Invictus, but I'd like to start with you, Shale, a little bit and talk a little bit about sort of, you know, what does it take from the ground level to, you know, leave what you were doing and get started with a business?
I would say passion is probably the one thing that everyone needs first, right? And clear vision. I started Game Board because I'm a gamer. I have a financial background, and I'm not an engineer. I thought this product needed to exist. I was like, why doesn't this tech exist? Why can't I use a chess set on an iPad? And it just led me down a rabbit hole. I mean, to start a company, you have to be a little crazy. And I think we all probably are. But you have to be bold, right? You have to take steps. You have to ask for help. You have to ask for resources. You have to ask for guidance, and then actually use them. I think that ideas are a dime a dozen. Everyone has brilliant trillion-dollar ideas, I don't know, but it's about the execution, right? It's about how do you take those steps to enable that vision? How do you take those steps to enable that product, and always have that passion driving behind you? That's the key to making sure you're going to go from one stage to the next.
Great, thank you. And then Orion, you know, you had a big corporate career behind you before you started to launch BlackTravelBox, and I'm just kind of curious, sort of what sparked the leap of faith to do that?
Well, I think there were a couple of things. To be honest, there is a practicality that's wrapped up in it as well. So for me, it was, all right, I'm doing this as a passion project. I'm doing it on nights and weekends. I'm not necessarily thinking about this as this multi-billion-dollar company. But then as I started to do the homework and started to really look at the consumer and realize that we actually do need something like this, it really does need to exist. And it's taking away, not having the type of diversity that we're looking for within like beauty and across other places. is taking away from the experience of women like me and men. And so for me, it was one of those things that I was like, well, I know that I have the skill set for this. I know I have the skill set to do it once it's big. Now, the figuring out how to be an entrepreneur has been an interesting, I'm serious, y'all, this is the struggle is real. So it really was it was part leap of faith, but it was also part like, I know what this could be and I know where it could go. And to your point, the passion piece came in because it was the passion of the consumers. The more people I talked to and started getting notes from around the world that they had heard me on a pitch or heard me on a podcast, and they're like, thank you for seeing us and please keep doing this. And I'm like, well, crap, I guess I have to.
Great. On that subject, Lorena, you actually meet your consumers every day with the product that you sell. And I'm curious, sort of how do you gather information from them, and what kind of sort of feedback have you been able to act on right away?
Well, it is a constant communication. Even that I am the CEO and founder, it's very important that I'm in front of everything, right? And knowing people and understanding what are the needs. What happened now when that we are doing things online, I mean, my place was a place that I wanted to do it was a place of encounter. People used to go to Maria Empanada to meet with people, and now entering to the online side is it was against a little bit of my desire. So, but anyways, I mean, understanding that innovation needs to be there and needs to be a part of me, that I need to innovate in some things, and understanding also the consumer that this is a new way to go, and how can we get in the better way, right, to them. So for example, we were talking just a few minutes coming here that DoorDash will come and take some pictures of our product. So of course, my first reaction, okay, it will be an empanada in a box, so you can think that people will get it in a box. But no, actually, it's how a customer wanted in your house. So it will be in a simple plate with a simple napkin, probably no garnishes, because it's in the simple way how you want it. So understanding what the consumer needs is a constant research that you need to do when you have a company.
Great. And moving on to kind of operations, because you talked about needing to pivot to online. On a different operational note, Jeff, I wanted you to speak a little bit because you've got a very interesting business model with both a nonprofit and a for-profit side of it. And I'm curious, was that always the idea when you set up the business, or was that something you kind of grew into?
Yeah, so we're huge believers in conscientious capitalism. An organization can do far more with the resources it has than an individual itself. And there's a massive correlation between TBI and PTSD and depression and income level or access to effective healthcare. So one of the things that we wanted to do was make sure that our organization on the for-profit side was always donating money to the nonprofit to continue that accessibility for the patients that need it most. 80% of those incarcerated have a traumatic brain injury. 54% of the world's homeless has a traumatic brain injury. These are all problems that don't go away unless you fix the head trauma. And so we wanted to make sure that we could create access for that.
Great. Thank you. And really amazing to have thought of that from day one.
Thank you.
Great. A typical entrepreneurial experience is you start out thinking that you're going to do one thing and you end up pivoting to something else. And I think, Kevin, you're a great example of that. You were explaining to me earlier today that you started with one idea and then it was a beautiful product, but there was no market there for it and you changed. So I'm curious if you could talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so the inspiration for our original plan was the problem that I had. Like all of us, I had to scratch my own itch, right? It was, I come from a family of, my dad's a physician, my mom's a nurse. My best friend in college was a type 1 diabetic, and I felt very literate when it came to navigating the healthcare space. And even still, I found it very difficult to find a doctor that I needed. I just had this one thing that was pretty minor that I just could not get answered. And every doctor I talked to, it was a rigmarole of trying to find out whether they were covered, et cetera. So I created originally we set out to create a concierge for healthcare to help individuals navigate the complexities of the space. And with that, there was a lot of hustling, drumming up relationships with data partners, and really just creating this entire platform around this individual concierge, which was awesome. There's still videos of it online. You guys can check it out. I wish this product existed in the market, but the reality is that the best products don't always win, particularly in an industry like healthcare where there's a lot of conflicting incentives. So what we discovered in the process of building out this platform over the course of 3 years, we made several $100,000s in revenue, but that wasn't enough to sustain us, and it wasn't going to lead us down the vision that we wanted to actually transform healthcare. And we made a couple key discoveries. One was that we happened to be really good at combining data using software, and that there was a major market need. I think I'm the only person on the stage with an enterprise SaaS company. Nobody as an entrepreneur, well, not nobody, but most people don't set out to create an enterprise SaaS company. You start something because it's really cool to like sell to your friends. You know, Lorena gets applause for Maria Empanada. Nobody's applauding Orderly Health, and that is fine. That is fine. It's really cool. But yeah, you know, I think the key thing about staying alive is you have to have that resilience, you have to have that grit, and very, very similar to what Lorena said, you have to listen to your customers and more importantly to the market, because if you don't, you're dead in the water.
Right. And speaking of responding and having resilience, Orion, your business could not have started at a worse time. A travel business starting right at the beginning of COVID. Talk a little bit about what you were able to do to not only pivot the business, but how you had mentioned to me that you found that this year was actually an incredible year for you to take advantage of other opportunities. So kind of curious if you can address that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, timing could have been better. But that said, you know, I'm very, very passionate about this out-of-home beauty space, personal care space, because nobody's doing it. And that's really where the white space is. So if you're sitting down as a classically trained marketer, you're looking for, where's the white space? Where do I innovate into? And bringing everything in home, or it's like, well, why don't you just make it for home? And it's like, because there's a billion people doing that already. And there's I'm not bringing anything really new to that, and certainly nothing that I'm particularly passionate about. So it really was an exercise of just kind of just allowing the situation to be what it is, and then stepping in and saying, okay, given what it is, where can we go? What do we want to do? And how do we make sure that we are still on track? And the biggest piece being, I didn't want to pivot a business that nobody knew yet, right? Because if I wanted it to pivot back to what the original concept was, now you've got a rebrand on hand. And so essentially I did two things. One, the core of the business and the business values are really centered around wellness. So travel as a form of self-care is a major wellness vehicle within the Black community. And then two, making sure, again, beauty out of home was a core focus. And so I created both products that were linked to COVID. So we did some donation products that allowed people to get more of our products into other folks' hands, but it was also donated to frontline workers so that they could, you know, kind of give themselves a little bit of a break. And then the second piece was creating new platforms within BlackTravelBox. So I created the staycation collection. So if you can't go out and travel, I would bring the travel to you and bring an at-home experience that is still very much anchored in travel and the celebration of that, and the brand could still sit in it. And then, as you mentioned, you know, the last year has been really interesting in that while, you know, I was imagining myself growing this business, grassroots, doing all these really cool things, it really forced me to take a step back and really work on the long-term strategy of the business. And through programs like DenSUN and other accelerators, I was able to take that time and really make it beneficial. So now 2021 is looking pretty good, and certainly 2022.
Great. And Jeff, I'd love you to jump in on that in terms of how an accelerator like DenSUN kind of helped you refocus on the business.
Well, I wanted to comment, that's the hardest thing to do as an entrepreneur, is to allow for space and timing. We just want to go do something, right? And the hardest part is to sit back and I'll actually allow something to blossom and figure out what it is first. So good job. It's the hardest thing in the world for me to try and do. So I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
What I'd asked was, so what I asked was sort of how, you know, Orion sort of took the opportunity to kind of use DenSUN in a year when she had a little bit of downtime, but was also refiguring. Sort of how for your business was an experience of being in a kind of program like this? How did it shape the way you structured the business and changed it?
Yeah, so I think the hardest thing as an entrepreneur is you feel like you're kind of alone on an island. Nobody really understands your problems. And it's great in an accelerator, especially like DenSUN, where you can be in a group of entrepreneurs that are all kind of facing the same problem. Your business model might not be the same, but having a fresh perspective and an outside perspective, even just from the other participants, was phenomenal. And then to get a room full of mentors with that amount of business knowledge, it's invaluable. And especially during the pandemic, like my cohort was right at the end, the pandemic happened right towards the latter half of ours. And I'm very, very grateful that you guys still managed to finish us out. Very grateful. So thank you.
Sure.
Yes, I completely agree with you. You don't feel alone. You are not in that island anymore. And the incredible part is that they are all for you. You know, we are working together. And I love because when COVID came and me having a restaurant and shutting down locations and all that, I remember the next day I received a lot of emails from the people asking me, from my team, from this group, asking me, how can we help you? What do you need? Michael, team, everybody that was here present, it was very present to probably what they were hearing in the news and what I was suffering. I still need to respond to those emails, but I didn't have time yet. But that's the team that you get into this, the mentorship and the support, and I applaud that.
The
Thank
community.
you. And the community.
The community.
Yeah.
So I want to tack on here because I think it's really important, especially when we've got Invictus project up here. I think mental health for entrepreneurs is so important. We all talk about the value of community, accelerators, advisors, that's all helpful, but just having somebody out there know that what you're going through and being able to say like, hey, I've been there, hang in there a little longer. There's an expression that there's only two types of serials. It's serial entrepreneurs and killers. So kind of to what Shay was saying earlier, that you have to be a little bit crazy to start this. But yeah, I mean, I think the hardest thing is just getting over that hump, feeling like you have somebody that has your back and just reminding you that there's little things that can make progress. Because another quote, so I read a lot of startup materials. I think it was Fred Wilson who says that startups don't fail. It's just that the founders give up. I think that's really true. When you reflect on the fact that something like 99% of startups fail, the only reason that the 1% succeed is because there was somebody out there who said, come hell or high water, I'm going to make this work. And community is what keeps us afloat.
Yeah. Burnout for sure is a very, very real thing. And for whatever reasons, entrepreneurs are terrible at self-care, right? So it's nice to have people in your corner that can say, hey, maybe you need a break. Let's go out for a beer. Let's talk about whatever's going on.
So you're in the business of diversion. So how do you deal with that issue?
So for us, what we're doing at the core of Game Board is we're connecting people through gaming, right? And I think this really strikes on, I think what we've all felt during COVID is isolation, and gaming, specifically mobile gaming or video gaming, whatever it is, right? Everything's moving to the metaverse. I get it. But what it does is it creates isolation trends within our population. ADHD, depression, suicide are all attributed to gaming, right? Because people are in this virtual plane, meeting with virtual people, interacting with people you're never going to meet in real life. And I think the one thing COVID taught us is you cannot replicate the physicality, the connection, the community, right? And Game Board is about using technology for this enablement, encouragement of sitting around and playing together, right?
Yeah, we're a communal species, right?
We
are an absolute communal species. We need others to survive.
We do, yeah.
The mental health claims went up 1,000-fold during the pandemic.
Yeah.
So clearly, it doesn't work being isolated, right?
No, it doesn't. And we
need actual connection.
We need real connection. It will again.
Now-
Honestly, we have this, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was going to say, we have this bold mission that not just gaming, but this future of technology will exist at this intersection of digital and physical, right? That it is not one or the other. It is this hybrid approach. And I mean, look at what we're doing now. It is a hybrid approach, right? And that it is the future. And there's a space to be online and innovative, but there's a space to gather and be together. That is humanity, right?
I just want to say one of the things of this last piece of the conversation that's just super is, when you bring in a group together like DenSUN, it's businesses from very diverse areas. And you look at these 5 people, their businesses cross every aspect of life, if you will. And what's amazing is how much you can teach each other and build a community. And that's going to lead me into my next section of questions, which are about community, but in the larger sense of one of the real goals, and it's the reason Blackstone Charitable Foundation and Ben exist, is really to see entrepreneurship as a way to build community and build out in the community. And one thing we've learned is there's a real strong need to bring in entrepreneurs from diverse communities because they give back to their communities. And the only way we're going to really build a successful economy is to have entrepreneurs who are representative of all the communities we live in. So I'm kind of curious to ask each of you, and you look like you're ready and roaring to start, but to ask each of you how in your way, in your businesses, have you kind of given back into your community?
Yeah, they say those closest to the problem are often closest to the solution, right? My career field in the military, I was a bomb technician. So if you guys have ever seen the Hurt Locker, that was my job. And we have the highest suicide rate among any other job in the military. So we are losing veterans at a rate 3 times faster than we've lost in 2 combat areas of operation. It's not going to get any better. And the first thing that we wanted to do was, how do we help our brothers? How do we help our brothers and sisters? Because they are dying at astronomical levels. But more importantly, how do we get this accessible to the people who need it most? And that's why we had the nonprofit organization. So right now, the nonprofit programs support veterans and first responders. However, we're going to be expanding that programs to tackle other socioeconomic problems like homelessness, substance abuse, domestic violence. Even those that are incarcerated, they don't really truly have a chance to rehabilitate unless you take care of the head trauma and the mental health disorders.
Right. I'm curious, Lorena, in terms of hiring, you obviously are a Latina businesswoman, great role model in your community, but also how does that translate also into the people that you're hiring and the community that you employ?
What I always try to focus, of course, in the Latino. The Latino, I think, comes with a backpack and a few dollars there, and a lot of experience that you leave your family, your friends, your life, and you come to another country to get some stability and something better. So we try to make sure that our people are mostly women in the artisan part. I hire a lot of grandmas that they don't use the internet and they will never know how to play something like in a board game like that.
But Tejo they can play.
They can play Tejo, that's right. So and it's incredible because they love to feel part of the community. They need a job, they need to get, they are still providing for their family. Here in Mexico, wherever it is, and they come and learn to be an artisan of empanadas. So it's a beautiful thing. We have a lot of ladies there that you want to have them every time that you see them because they're adorable. And we need to train them and we need to teach them how to be an empanada artisan. And we focus in giving that back. I come from a country where job was so hard to find. My mom was without a job. I was without a job. So we take, and now I'm providing job. So it is an incredible feeling, and I'm focusing, of course, mostly in my community.
Great. And Orion, you mentioned that part of your pivot during the COVID period was to develop a product line that was really a donation line. I'm curious if you could talk a little more about that.
Yeah, it's so having worked in corporate previously, there's always that like, hey, we should have a cause or something because people like cause marketing. And I definitely didn't want to do that. It's not compulsory if nobody's paying me to. So like I can actually do what I want to do and make a company that I want to make. And so, not being at scale yet and not having these opportunities to employ people where I wanted to and that kind of thing, just taking what we had. So we took our two best-selling products, our body balm and our lip balm, created a bundle out of that, allowed our customers to purchase it. And we partnered with an organization actually in Chicago, which is my hometown, called the Dream Academy Foundation. And so Dream Academy Foundation went out into the city and they were donated first-line workers. But it's not just like the doctors and nurses, which are great. Don't get me wrong, totally great. But they were also going to homeless shelters where people are working with a population and the cleanliness and all of these things. There's so much more exposure. The clinics, which we're actually seeing more people than the actual large hospitals were in many areas in many cities. Urban areas are very much underserved by hospitals and critical care and things like that. And so that was the first piece to it. The second piece to it was donating a portion of the proceeds to the National Association of Free and Charitable Clinics. Because again, a lot of people aren't getting treatment at these bigger hospitals. They're actually getting their primary care from clinics. And so it just really was about what was a great wellness cause at the time that served the community that I serve with the brand.
Yeah, I think no matter how big or small your business is, you want to contribute and do some good, right? And so like, it doesn't matter how big or small you are, you can still contribute and do some good.
Yeah.
So
Can I make a shameless plug? We're hiring at Last Game. Engineers, game designers, product designers. We're a team of 22. We represent over 5 countries. We speak I think 12 languages between our entire team. We're dispersed. Women engineers, women game designers. Please go to our website.
I'm going to jump to Orderly, which is growing leaps and bounds. How are you beginning to define for yourself, but also for your team, what kind of role you should play in the community?
Yeah, sure. So Orderly, 2 of our core values are humanity and inclusivity. And humanity, when we define it, we actually have a little blurb on it. It starts with we recognize that we are all humans first. And what that means is that when you go out in the community, when you're working with your customers, we have to recognize people are not commodities, that they come with their own emotional attachments. They've got to take their kids, they have to take a nap, whatever. So we really try to focus on that aspect of our business in terms of how we sell. But in addition, we're also part of Pledge 1%. Shameless plug there. If you guys haven't heard of it, check it out. Where we donate 1% of time, revenue, and equity to charitable causes that we care about. So to that end, this is totally coincidental, but just this week, one of our engineers identified a cause that he really cares about. There's a nonprofit called OutCare, and it's basically a listing of providers that are friendly for the LGBTQ community. And we've reached out to them to try to see if we can basically give them our product for free. Because we want to support that aspect of the community. We want to be able to, they're a nonprofit, so we don't really think of them as being able to be a huge contract anyway. And it's a great way for us to give back to the community, find out what unique challenges that they face, so that we don't have blind spots. And then, we are also we have an Orderly Gives Back Day. So our VP of Operations, her mother is struggling with cancer right now, and so she organized an entire organization for our entire team to do the cycle for survival. And our team basically took a day off, and we all competed on Gia's team. So go Gia.
Great. I'm going to ask, because I'm conscious a little bit of time, and I did want to get this in, of that DenSUN really is at the end of the day all about kind of not only community, but also advice and mentoring. And I'm kind of curious if I'm just going to start with you, Shell, and go down the line, but sort of what was if you can think about it, the one best tip or piece of advice you got from a mentor?
John Nordmark said to me, am I allowed? Shit's going to get really hard. And he's like, be ready, right? And he was really serious in that. He's like, if you as an entrepreneur are going to take this leap of faith and you're going to put yourself, your product, your life on the line, and you want to do this, and this is this is what you're passionate about, it's going to get really tough. And every stage, it's actually going to get tougher. And you know, and you take a step back and you kind of consider that for a moment, being like, no, I really do want to do this. Right. And that could have been the moment where I'm like, oh no, I want to run away. But it was this clarity. And it wasn't just giving this like the overarching philosophy. I'm sorry, English is like my fourth language. I suck. Philosophical. Right?
Philosophical.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
On the first try.
Lorena's like, I don't know.
I don't know. Don't look at me.
Yeah. But it was like, he was like, now let me help you in those steps. You know, let me tell you what you need to focus on. Let me tell you what, you know, what pitfalls are going to come. And it's not just about being there and providing this overarching guidance. It's literally providing that community structure, being with you, giving feedback, advice, making connections, opening doors, places that people I've never could have talked to if it wasn't for someone being like, you need to listen to what she has to say. So I think community, but then actionable things within that community is really important, right? Don't just talk about it, do it. Yeah.
Lorena, how about you? What was the best piece of advice you got from a mentor?
Well, it came one time that I needed to dismiss my best employee. And that was horrible. And I didn't know how to do that. And I went to my mentor, 911 mentor. How do I do this? And why do I need to do this? Well, you need to act fast, right? So it was a terrible moment. But after that, that I crossed that moment, we have a conversation, and the best piece of advice that I got from him is that you're going to be disappointed. You're going to be disappointed by people, by systems, by process, by product, right? You're going to be disappointed. And you are going to disappoint somebody else, always. And you'd never believe that. I'm not going to disappoint you, but yes, you are, we are humans. So be ready for mistakes, be ready for dealing with situations like that, but do something about it. Once again, so I copy to you in this, do something about that and you will be able to learn on that. So that's my piece of advice.
Jeff.
When I think back to my cohort, I can't think of a single piece of advice that was significant. We were dealing with a number of challenges, some that we knew about, some that were clear and present, and then some that were just completely blindsided by. And I think the most valuable thing that we got from all of the mentors was the validation and the words of encouragement, and hearing something like keep going from mentors that have 15 years more business experience and have multiple startups, it's tremendously confidence building, especially when you feel like the baby's going out with the bathwater kind of deal.
Orion.
Similarly, I mean, COVID, I can't remember most of what happened during the time period, let's be honest. But what I will say is what was most impactful, and I think it was an indirect piece of advice in the sense that oftentimes we would start our sessions with a check-in and just to say like, you know, what is on your mind right now, or what's the thing that you're struggling with, and being able to be with a cohort, even virtually, that's people are saying, my mental health is down the drain. I feel terrible. I need to focus on this. And you hear that 10, 15 times and you're like, oh, I'm not on an island. This isn't just me. I'm not doing something wrong. And there's encouragement in that. And it also, you know, you have people at various levels of success within the cohort, right? And how you think of success. And so being able to see that some things are sort of just ubiquitous to the experience, no matter what stage or place you're at, really was a teachable moment for me to go, stop doubting, keep going. It's supposed to be uncomfortable, you know? So that was huge.
Yeah, I feel like when we're done with everybody, nobody's going to want to start a company because we've got basically like, shit's going to get real. You're going to disappoint people. Stick with it because it's really hard. Keep going. I mean, that's real. That's correct. I'm going to summarize the advice that I got from an advisor from DenSUN. I think, I don't think they said it as pithy or as eloquent, but it was basically run into your fears. There was a comment that I was having, or a conversation I was having about, the worst possible scenario. He was asking me like, what are you afraid of? And I was like, well, if we fire both of these people, we're done. Like we don't have a company anymore. And then we walked through it and like, no, play that out, right? And I think that's something that I've done a number of times since, and even with my team now, I very often run those kinds of scenarios, which is, what is the worst case scenario in this situation, and how do we prepare for that? It is a little bit of a, hope for the best, but plan for the worst. And very often in a startup, the worst is going to happen, and you realize actually it's not that bad if you're ready for it, right? So I think that's something I've really taken with me.
Great. And that brings me to kind of the last round of questioning for the panel. Then we'll have real questions from the real audience. But so we don't end on a negative. One of the great things about being an entrepreneur, I think, is ultimately personal growth and your growth as leaders and growth as people. And I'm kind of curious to sort of, for the audience that's out there of kind of younger entrepreneurs or earlier stage and aspiring entrepreneurs, sort of what do you see as the next step for you as leaders and entrepreneurs, and how do you kind of see the future?
I'll start. So I think, so I just came off of an offsite with my entire team, and we did a lot of growth work with a third-party mediator, coach, whatever you want to call him, basically a paid therapist for your team. And I have a lot of growth to do, turns out. No, I would say that since starting the company, I would say the biggest area of growth for me has definitely been managing people. It is the biggest variable by far with any organization is the people. Again, that's one of the reasons why our value is humanity, because it really puts a focal point on, hey, we're not cogs in a machine. You can't just write a line of code and expect us to all behave exactly how you want us to behave. Our systems are buggy. There's a lot of things that are wrong with, we're not hardwired to do the same thing over and over again. We come with emotions, we come with baggage. And for me, it's been constant self-reflection and failure, disappointing people, learning to apologize well. That is something I think that, maybe my friends and family would disagree, but I feel like I've learned to apologize much better. I sort of walk away from a staff meeting. I'm like, oh, that was bad. I got to go back and figure this out. How can I frame this so that they're not all going to quit tomorrow? But I think the next chapter for me, I've said this all along, is that I really want to grow into a position where the company outlasts me, that I could get hit by a bus tomorrow and it's going to keep going because of the values that we have put in place and some of the foundational aspects of the framework and the scaffolding of the company that I've helped to shape. And I remind my team all the time, I try to come about it with a fair dose of humility, that I think I'm going to get a lot of nods on this, but none of us know what we're doing, right? We Google a lot and we read a lot of blogs and we figure things out as we go. But if you do some things right and you're thoughtful about it, I'm super excited if the company outgrows me and the board says, hey, you're not good enough anymore. We're going to replace you with a professional CEO. And I watch this thing turn from 30 people to 3,000 or 30,000 people. That'd be amazing. Now, of course, I want to be at the top of that, but that's not something I'm going to cling to, because I feel like I can still hang my hat on the fact that this was something that didn't exist before, that was created, and I was able to put some foundational aspects into it that let it thrive.
Anyone want to add anything to that?
I'll say that, you touched on this very beautifully, but there's like, what you don't know is what you don't know. So from like a growth perspective, it's like, oh, wow, I made it this far. Didn't expect that. Okay. And what do I do now? And then it's like learning, and it's trying to get all your hands on as many books. And I feel like I'm at that stage where you're just trying to absorb as much information as possible and talk to people that are a step ahead of you or 4 steps ahead of you that you can learn from. Like the board obviously helps us out a lot more, but that mentorship is really key. People who have been there, people who've made mistakes, people who can really guide you to be like, this is what you don't know, because you don't know what to look for. You don't know which stage you're at. And the only way to understand that is to accept that you don't know everything and have that sort of humility in that and try to figure out how you can be the best version of yourself. And I know that sounds very like altruistic, but it's true. It's like, how can I do best for the company and the people that that put their heart and soul into game board as well. So
I think
Very
one of the
good
message you're saying is never, both of you, is never stop learning. You know,
never.
Jeff.
Yeah, as far as growth goes, I think the main thing that I focused on, especially during DenSUN and then after DenSUN, was balance, finding some balance and having some self-care, prioritizing my own self-care with some meditation and reflection. And that comes when there's hard decisions that you failed and you let somebody down. To learn from that, you actually have to allow some space and analyze what went wrong so you don't make that mistake twice. But more importantly, I've realized that the more comfortable I am in my own skin, the more effective I am on the outside.
Preach.
That's very
No,
true.
seriously. I think, I had to learn how to be an entrepreneur because I knew how to be a business owner. And it's a very different thing, right? When you do that in a corporate space, you've got systems and people and infrastructure that's already there, and you know how to kind of make the most out of that situation. As an entrepreneur, for me, it really, like, the last 2-3 years have been learning how to be an entrepreneur, learning how to be not scrappy in what I used to have as a definition of scrappy. I only have 4 million to spend. Oh my God, how will I ever get this done?
What would you mean?
And really start to learn the basics, like, how do I mail a package? It's incredibly hard if you've never had to do it. And with that also, now I'm in a season, and I think the company is in a season, because so many things have happened over the last year and a half, that my voice can be amplified in places and spaces that it wasn't before. And that I can really step into where my wheelhouse of years of experience comes in, right? So I can have these conversations with, companies like Macy's and Target, and be very, very literate in those spaces. And so for me, it's a season change of really stepping into not being as freaked out by not knowing what the heck I'm doing next. And being able to now really see the fruits of what I know BlackTravelBox can be. And so I'm sure once we get in the middle place somewhere where it's like, we've made it, but we haven't made it because we still can make more, that'll be the next, big growth spurt. It's sort of like when you have one when you're 8 and then you have one when you're 14, and 14's never pretty, like, ever. We're definitely at a knobby knees stage, but I think we're starting to blossom a bit.
Lorena, I'm going to give you the last word.
I am so blessed that I'm an entrepreneur. I just need to say that because Maria Empanada teach me a lot. And more than learning about the business and being an entrepreneur and now being a CEO and understanding what is a founder and all that, and the language that is behind on all that, I'm learning what do I want for me. And that is completely taking me away from what Maria Empanada is, but it's what is in that for me. And it's not about the growth of Maria Empanada itself and the money and conquer the United States with all Maria Empanada next to Chipotle. But that's going to happen.
Like that.
But the other thing is that it is that I want to be a better leader every single day. And I want to grow making leaders also. So I do have now 55 potential leaders right there at my restaurant. And me being the tool of probably teaching, modeling what they can get from that too, it is a fantastic intention of growth. And one of my best employees just quit on me. Is that okay? How I said? Quit on me because he's opening his own businesses. And that's the way how I wanted to do it. That teach me a lot, not just in my business, but something that I probably was part of it. And I know that that's happened. So that's my goal and growth.
Well, I think this is terrific because this final round of questioning showed for those people out in the audience who are in earlier stages or thinking of starting a business that one of the great things about entrepreneurship is you kind of are always learning and you're always growing, and give these 5 a round of applause for doing that. So I think we have time for some questions coming from the audience. I see The man in the red shirt. Oh, no, why don't you start there in the back? Great.
So small businesses get into an startups and small businesses will be operated from their home, a coffee shop, and if they're lucky enough to afford it, get into a co-working space. And if you go to most co-working spaces, the idea was that you were co-working, but you're not. It's fairly isolated there. How do we as a ecosystem and a larger community, we make these resources that accelerators and incubators offer? How do we make them available to a larger community so that we can move up the ranks and then hopefully get into an
I'm sorry, can I? I was rejected from every accelerator, from Techstars to Y Combinator to anyone that you can think of that takes equity for money. Commons Champa accepted me into their cohort. And I think more resources like that as an ecosystem that are built by the community for the community need access. They need mentors who are even, at our stage, but even like 10 steps ahead to give back to programs like that. They need funding and they need the ability to give entrepreneurs like us. Like, I want to build a website. I was building an engineering product to be like, okay, let me give you access to, some silicone. Let me give you access to a 3D printer, things like that, like simple things to just, this is how you build an app. This is how you create a website. Those are instrumental and they're very basic to do, but it enables you and it helps you grow. And I would say that coffee shop mentality, that is exactly what a community-based, I don't even want to call it an accelerator or an incubator. I don't know. What do we call the Commons Champa? Or startup hub. Thank you. But more resources and more access to things like that.
I would like to add, you are not leaving here without talking to Tim or Michael, but other than that, I am a new citizen here, so you don't have any idea how much help there's here for you to support you in the startup or even to grow in. So don't get down because you receive no's. Continue looking for it because honestly, there's a lot of help around.
I think too that the small business owners that are working out of their home or the coffee shop need to take some accountability too by getting involved in the startup community. When we first start out, we're almost afraid to get involved into this community and inject ourselves into the startup world. But in reality, once you start moving into it and leaning into that uncomfortable environment, you find that it's pretty damn welcoming,
And I think it's also a piece of finding the things that fit where you're at and your age and stage of business. Honestly, more and more communities are cropping up. A lot of them are online, not even just because of COVID, but because they're just natural spaces and places to create communities. You can get into free communities on Facebook right now that have a wealth of knowledge. One of the things, I joke about like not being able to mail a package, but I got on a community on Facebook and I was a little embarrassed to ask. So I just searched like, how you mail this? And there were other people who were strong enough to ask them the dumb questions. And I could actually get a lot of that, not only, sort of tactical knowledge, but then also some of the strategic and executional and like, how do you approach this? So whether you live in a community that has a physical space like the Commons, like the hub, or you're somewhere where you're just like, I sell toenail clippers in a tiny mall in Iowa, like whatever it is that you're doing, get online and start to find those places and spaces that you could potentially, you want to steal my mic, don't you? Okay. It's totally cool. But start finding those places and spaces because they do exist. I was gonna give it
Shit, I didn't mean to cut you off. So I wanted to give a slightly different perspective, which is you don't have to go to an accelerator, right? I think that very often accelerators are seen as the gold standard for how you're going to launch into the stratosphere, et cetera. As somebody who went through 500 startups and Techstars, I would say that doing it the hard way, it can sometimes be harder, but in the end, it could be much more rewarding. And to echo what everybody said, there are so many resources online in terms of just getting started. Like Cooley Go is an incredible, you basically are getting hundreds of thousands of dollars of free legal advice on Cooley Go. There's blogs, there's books, there's all sorts of things that you can use. And if you get to keep that equity and you learn the hard way and you seek out the community proactively, you will get to keep more of your company, which allows you to do so much more. To wit, most recently, I think it was the largest acquisition by a non-VC funded company ever happened this year. Anybody know what it was? No? MailChimp? MailChimp just got bought for $12 billion. Didn't take a dime of VC funding. Took 20 years to get there, but their two founders walked away with $6 billion each. And I'm not saying that you're doing this all for money, but I'm just saying that there are ways to do it without VC or accelerators.
I think we touched on earlier the idea of community. Do it with community. And then if that comes in the form of a VC accelerator, an incubator, something like that, that's great. But there's a number of ways to get there. I mean, like this program isn't an accelerator in that regard, right? Like there isn't any equity stake or anything like that, but the community piece has been invaluable.
So I'm just going to, conscious of time, ask for one more question. Do we have time for one more question, or we have time for one more question, I think. So I think this gentleman in the red shirt, right?
Both Keith and Lorena mentioned having to let go of employees, and Lorena, you in particular mentioned having to let go of one of your best employees. I've fired a lot of employers and hired a lot of employees, but I've never fired my best employee. Why? Like what was, I mean, is it just the growth of the team? They weren't a good fit, or was that a misstatement looking from your face?
Can you turn off the camera? Why did I fire my best employee? It can be a good employee, but it cannot go to the values of the company. And that is something that is not negotiated. So things you need to figure out what is a negotiation and what is not. And definitely when things are crossing your values, that is not acceptable and is not trainable. So that's why I fire my best employee.
Yeah, if you don't have the alignment within your own core ethos, then it's just like a relationship. Things don't work out, and it's better. You'll be a lot happier doing your own thing, and I'm going to be a lot happier doing my own thing.
Kevin, I'm going to give you 30 seconds.
Okay, I'll do this quickly. Sometimes I said this to my team last week at our offsite. When I let somebody go, I'm thinking of all of them, because the team is bigger than the person, and you could have one individual who's an incredible performer who actually causes the rest of the team to suffer.
So I'm going to, for final comments, bring Michael Beavis up, who's from the Denver Economic Development and Opportunity, the organizer of this fabulous program, DenSUN. And
great, thank you very much. Shale, I'm just trying to still think of the board game that would teach you the English word philosophical, but let me know what it is when it comes up. And before I get started real quick, Orion, you have some big news to share with us about something that's happening tonight, right?
I guess I do. Yeah, so we have the pitch, the Denver Startup Week pitch finals tonight. I will be there. I will be the second to last company. So I know my run order, but last night I did win the BIPOC smaller pitch competition. So yeah, I know. I was like, oh yeah. So yeah, thanks.
Great. And one more round of applause for all these amazing entrepreneurs up there. So I'm Michael Beavis. I oversee innovation and entrepreneurship for the city of Denver. I work specifically in the Office of Economic Development and Opportunity. And before I get started, I want to give a big kudos to my colleague, Tim Martinez, who had the vision for creating this program in the first place. So, and we refer to this program as a post-accelerator program, but that doesn't mean you have to have gone through an accelerator to participate in the program. It's 100% free. And you've heard that phrase, it takes a village. Well, that's kind of what we're trying to do here. And this program was created to address a problem, phenomenon in the entrepreneurship world known as the Valley of Death, right? A terrible term. And you've heard all of these entrepreneurs talk about the struggles, both from financial and business strategy and mental health and all these things. And this program was created to do that. And this village is run by our office, Dito, as well as Ben, in the advisoryship and the mentorship that their audience provides. and Colorado Thought Leaders Forum, which addresses the mental health aspects of our entrepreneurs. And that's what we're here to do. So thank you again for your time. And I look forward to talking to any of you who are interested in speaking with me about the program afterwards. And I'd love to talk to you about the Commons on Champa.